I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and here today with me is Thom Calandra of the Calandra Report. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey Charlotte, thank you this year for being here.
Yes, good. So we're here at PDAC, it's the second day of the show. I think we should start by talking a little bit about what's going on here. How's the atmosphere? What have you seen?
Well, let's go step by step. We're seeing more active protesters, third world, I don't want to call them third world activists. They actually seem to be first world activists wanting to live in a third world environment but still have their cell phones and aluminum pots and pans and fancy cars with all the metals that come out of the earth. But a lot of protests, much more organized this year than in previous years. They stopped traffic the other day on Yonge Street, right outside. Very exciting. They packed some of the conference rooms, like the one for Ecuador, which Ecuador is a favorite of mine. So that's one. Two, of course, as you know, because we live in a viral world and have for at least 3,000 years, when we created sapiens, we know about this thing called a virus, whether it's H5N1, H1N1, SARS, common cold, or the coronavirus. Now, I just came out of I always manage to try to catch at least 15 or 20 minutes of Robert Friedland's latest thing, and even though he doesn't really vary that much, or hasn't in the past 6 months, he does give a splendid presentation. And this year was the revenge of I think it was the Revenge of the Metals with the Star Wars theme.
Okay.
I hope he's paying royalties on that theme. However, he made a great reference to the virus, and he said, look, I know the virus is real. It's not going to help the gold price, but I know it's real, and I want to thank you all for being together in this room, whether you're doing the PDAC handshake or the regular handshake. So, there are some people who are aware of it, some people who aren't. I happen to know at least 4 or 5 companies that I follow in the Calandra Report or own that decided either not to come or to cancel events. So that means I'll be drinking Arnold Palmer's instead of gin and tonics or draft IPA. But there is an entire segment of this population here, Charlotte, and I'm assuming, by the way, I shouldn't assume, but I'm expecting that attendance is going to be slightly lower than last year in a year that should be a record attendance year, right? Generally 26,000 people. So, you have the virus thing going on, but it makes the exhibit hall and some of the rooms a lot less crowded. I could actually get a seat in Ivanhoe's presentation. You'll actually talk to me. That's tremendous.
There we go. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to start at the beginning of what you were saying with the protesters. How does that make you feel to see those people out there? And what should we take away? What does that tell us about maybe what the mining industry should do to educate people or the level of knowledge?
Well, the Ecuador day yesterday when we had 7 or 8 very fine companies and the vice minister of mining and also the general undersecretary for the vice president in charge of sustainable, or I should say strategic development. And I just finished meeting them for a fabulous breakfast up on Stratus on the 36th floor of the TD Tower, where I left my notebook, but thank goodness I can go rescue it now that I know where it is. And the Vice Minister of Mining in Ecuador, which is right front and center in this whole thing, because they're revising their mining law and what they call their cadastro, which is the mining register for new concessions. So it's like, okay, mining can continue, but no new mining, no new business. And there's always concern about water, although I don't think there should be in Ecuador, but there is always concern about people using water permits as a gating item. And Enrique Gallegos is the name of the Vice Minister of Mining in Ecuador, and he and my fellow investors in one Ecuador company, Salazar Resources, and Freddie Salazar, who's Ecuadorian, and his son Freddie Salazar, and probably his grandson Freddie Salazar, but the Salazars were there, said, look, Senor Gallegos said, look, we have to acknowledge them, and they did. Everyone is acknowledging the protesters and doing as much as they can. The protesters, I think, are right to be skeptical sometimes in some cases, but you know, there are a lot of differences between Ecuador, let's say, and Colombia, which I love and still love, even though I don't go there as often now as I did even 2 years ago, and I lived there and worked there. And I love Colombia, but let's face it, there's a lot more illegal mining. There's a lot more theft of water through illegal dams. There's a lot more, I don't want to say guerrilla activity because it's focused mostly on politics, but the artisanal miners have a strong voice, and artisanal is a nice way of saying illegal miners, and they tend to have a much higher kill rate, they do have a much higher kill rate in Colombia, what with the use of Diablo de Polvo, or is it Polvo de Diablo, the devil's powder, boom, everyone gets killed in the illegal operation, or of course, sadly, in the use of mercury. And I think you'll see, I think the populations are about similar in Ecuador and Colombia. Anyway, Ecuador has about 60 million people, and it probably imports 20% of the mercury that Colombia imports. And I'm getting this from the mining ministry, so it's definitely from a source. So I think every situation is different, right?
Yeah.
We hear talk all the time. Yesterday there was someone at one of the presentations, I think it was for Macedonia or somewhere in the Eastern European countries, maybe the Tethyan Metals Belt. And he said, you know, I wouldn't want to be in the DRC. Well, I don't think he'd say that if I raised my hand, but I didn't get a response. If there were investors in the DRC, like I am, with Ivanhoe Mines, I don't think he'd say that if there were a DRC presence, because, you know, there's a lot of good going on right now in a lot of African nations. And I think most nations are making big inroads into environmental challenges. I don't mean to sound like you know, what's the word when somebody's always happy and, you know, kind of cavalier and signing off, but I do realize that we need metals. I've always realized it, and, you know, the facts are very impressive about the need for all sorts of metals, right? Not just precious metals or precious / industrial like silver, platinum, and palladium, but also nickel, cobalt, rhodium, and so on.
Okay, yeah, so
Copper.
Maybe a lack of knowledge that not all companies are the same, not all jurisdictions are the same. You can't paint them all with the same brush.
Yeah, in Canada, I mean, it's getting pretty hard to build a mine in Canada. I don't care where you are, unless, you know, unless you can show not just economic value, but connection to the, I saw like a protest from some small group that specializes in protesting against projects, that was protesting a project that I've followed forever up in Quebec, at Matawini. It's a graphite project. Graphite is also a metal that's used in batteries, and a lot more graphite in the battery than lithium, I can tell you that. And you know, they're protesting Matawini, which is a legitimate, years-long project to have a big employer there, maybe 2 hours north of Montreal, with graphite, because it's very rich graphite up there. And I happen to know, you know, the company Nouveau Monde is French for New World. Nouveau Monde and its folks are very committed to the community. I mean, like, they go out of the way to make sure that the locals, that the cabins, because it's a very beautiful country, the vacationers and the people who are there for a long time, like as in permanently, most of them want new jobs that would come with a clean graphite factory. And one hopes that they get it, but there's always going to be a dialectic, especially if you're speaking in French. The French and the Quebecois, they love the dialectic.
Yeah, and that was actually our poll question yesterday, was about Canada as a mining jurisdiction. We're doing a poll every day on Twitter for PDAC. We were asking if it's still attractive as a place to do business for mining companies. So I guess that all plays into that. Would you say it is, or?
Well, let's compare it. Let's compare it, since we're in North America, to
because it does
to
depend
USA,
where you look, right?
Right? Yeah. I mean, look, Nevada is probably one of the gold standards. Nevada is a state in the United States, and I used to, in a previous business, because we started MarketWatch, I started MarketWatch with a couple of other people. And we had a little business in Las Vegas. It wasn't a gambling business, it was a data business that served casinos. Sounds a little like investing. I would have to go to Vegas, but now I go to Nevada not for Las Vegas, I go to it for mines, whether it's Premier Gold Mines or Barrick Newmont, you know, or many of the countries that operate mines in Nevada that aren't American. So Nevada's the gold standard. So the answer to your question is, Canada is safe, but it's going to take a lot longer to get something through.
Just slow, okay.
Yeah.
And one other thing, we're not asking this at PDAC, but we've been talking about the election in the U.S., which is coming up. And do you feel that it's become a more permissive country to do mining business in with Trump? And are we in danger of losing that if he's no longer the president?
Well, the Donald has used his podium to, you know, to wreak havoc with environmental safeguards and, you know, BLM land and forestry and so on. And I'll say that because I'm a Californian, born in New York City, but a Californian, and open space is important to us. And offshore drilling, we tend to go like this, you know. So yeah, of course, he's taken presidential measures at the cabinet level to make it easier to develop. However, you know, I want to assure you, I want to get this on the record, because I'm rarely right about politics, but there's no way the Donald is getting elected in 2020. There's absolutely no way in the world. I don't care who runs against him. And it's just that it's very difficult to have that kind of track record. It's okay sometimes to say, you know what, we've gone too far. We need to help the uranium producers. I believe it. We need to accelerate some of the mining for strategic metals that go into cars, and even to, you know, accelerate gold mining. I mean, Nevada is like the 5th largest jurisdiction or 4th largest jurisdiction in the world for gold production and silver production. That's okay, as long as you go through channels. You know, but if you bully yourself and you bully your way through the process, it's not cool, mate. It's not cool. And by doing that, you alienate a lot of people, and you make a lot of people realize, I know I'm going to get flamed by some of my mining friends, but I'm just telling the truth. You can't fool the voters twice.
No, interesting you say that, because I know a lot of the conversation surrounding the election is who can beat him. But if you think it could be,
I think they all can beat him.
All of them.
Look, I'll be honest with you. I bare my soul. People know that, right? I just voted in the California primary, which is on Tuesday. It's called Super Tuesday.
Right.
And even though I used to work for Mike Bloomberg, and I have great respect for him, and I had a position with him in financial markets and news reporting in London at the beginning, more or less, of Bloomberg News. I voted in the primary by mail, as we always vote these days. Most of the world is seeming to move into mail. I voted for the Bernie, you know, and the reason is because Bernie Sanders at least walks the talk. I think that's why young people like him. They're so committed to him. You know, whether it's my kids, you know, it's a great headline. I don't know if I'm repeating this to you. I don't think I am. And it was in one of the university newspapers, but it was kind of a goof story, but it may have come out of UC San Diego, or where our daughter goes, or who knows, our son just graduated from Montreal, a university there. But it said 80% of young people polled will vote for the corpse of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, okay.
You know?
Yeah.
They have tremendous. So maybe he's our next, and once again, I'll take a lot of stuff for this, and you do. Maybe he's our next Ronald Reagan, you know, in his manner and his diplomacy and his presence. Right? Plus, he spent 2 years at Brooklyn College, and I graduated from Brooklyn College, so there.
Okay, sorry, I've taken you down a tangent. I do want to finish up by asking about coronavirus,
Oh.
which we touched on at the beginning,
Okay.
and especially with regards to the impact on the gold price. Is it
Oh.
playing into it, or is it just another thing that's a noise for gold?
Oh my gosh, so many people have different opinions.
They
you know,
do.
in that hall where Robert was giving his talk about battery metals and car metals and South Africa and the DRC, because they have big projects in both places. He said, I don't care about the coronavirus. It's not going to lift the price of gold. I'm not sure I believe that. I don't really know what the gold price is responding to these days as like its number one response. I want to say it's going to be, cheap money, cheap paper. We do have the cheapest paper in the world right now, and money has never been cheaper in the entire history of mankind, and maybe even before mankind was invented. Money is cheap. Interest rates are low.
And perhaps going lower?
Yeah, and you do have this belief that lower interest rates or lower interest rates, 1% on the 10-year, 30-year in the US, that's low. And as we know, 30 or 40% of the entire world has negative interest rates. So if you're in Germany, that means, and you have a mortgage, or even in the UK, I think, they give you money. Somehow they refund you money.
Uh-huh.
It's like getting a free toaster in the mail from your bank. Very cool. So I'm giving you a long, involved answer here, Charlotte, to say I think it's a financial impact, and I think the financial influence on the gold price will rule the day. I'm one of those people who believe gold will go to $10,000 US. I think it's going to go so high you won't be able to measure the price in currencies, in paper, because the purchasing power of gold will be so strong, and some other metals, maybe even copper at one point will become a precious metal. But its purchasing power will grow so much against paper that you'll get much better service at the Tesla dealer if you're paying in gold than if you're paying in paper.
Okay, I'm going to let you go now. That was great. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Good to hear from you.
It was a pleasure, Charlotte.
Thank you so much. Once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and this is Thom Calandra of the Calandra Report.